It seems to me that everyone on the internet these days is an expert, and we need to talk about it. Hello, and welcome back to the series here on YouTube, where we talk specifically about social media get-rich-quick scams. You can watch part 1 and 2 here in case you missed them. So far, we've talked about user-generated content coaching. We've discussed the myths and misleading marketing around creating passive income. And today we're going to talk about people on the internet calling themselves an expert in something that they have no business calling themselves an expert in. If that sounds good to you, consider giving this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and let's go ahead and jump right in. Listen, I'm not the boss here. I didn't say I was in charge of the internet. I'm not here to dictate who is or isn't an expert in something. I'm just a girl who spends a lot of time on the internet, and I've noticed some things, and I got a lot of shit to say about what I'm seeing on the internet. Because, oh my God, when I tell you how this whole idea for this video that you're watching right now started, last week, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm scrolling on Threads like I do multiple times every single day. And I come across this post right here. Last night, I made my first sale ever. I've been in digital marketing for 8 months. I made all the pivots, showed up consistently, bought all the things, and finally feel confident and aligned in what I offer. If you feel called to do something and your why is stronger than your excuses, you will find a way. Don't give up on your dreams. Now, I'm not gonna address that little sprinkle of toxic positivity there at the end. That's a conversation for another day. And if you've watched enough of my content, you can assume how I feel about that. But I want to talk about this post in a broader sense. Because guys, if you've followed me for any amount of time, especially over on a platform like Instagram or TikTok, you probably know that I am a small business girly. I love small business. I advocate for small business. I wish that every single small business owner would succeed in the small business that they're working to create. So I saw this post because one of my small business friends actually commented on it, congratulating this person. And initially I thought, wow, this is so great. You know, I can only imagine working so hard trying to build my business for 8 months and how good it would feel to finally make my first sale. You know, owning a business is hard, and a lot of people work really, really hard for a really long time and they never even make a single dollar. So like, kudos to this person for sticking it through for 8 months and finally making their first sale. But naturally, I'm wondering, what does this person sell? So what do? I click through to her profile, and lo and behold, what do I find? This is what it reads. Digital marketing mentor, helping you monetize your social media, find your voice, and help others do the same. This person is selling MRR. Now, if you don't know what that is, MRR, or master resale rights, is basically where you buy a course and then you have the rights to resell that course to your audience. You don't have to know anything or have any knowledge in the subject of the course that you're buying. So I could buy an MRR course about nutrition, for example, and then call myself a nutrition mentor and then resell it to you. And then you could also call yourself a nutrition mentor and then you could resell it to someone else, even though none of us have any experience or knowledge or education in nutrition.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
I have a couple videos that cover MRR specifically, so if you're interested in learning more about that or hearing my thoughts on that, I would encourage you to go watch those. Anyways, back to my story. Now, I understand this person isn't explicitly titling themselves expert. We're going to get to that in a minute, but let's unpack this. This person is calling themselves a mentor in digital marketing. Now, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but to me, the title of mentor implies some level of expertise. So this person is calling themselves a mentor in digital marketing, but then states that only after 8 months of promoting whatever it is she's selling was she able to secure her first sale. Again, my point here isn't to shame this individual for trying. I'm not the maker of the rules of the internet, but I certainly have a few questions. First one being, how can someone, anyone, not just this person, call themselves a mentor in a subject that they have never actually done or never had any level of success in? You are mentoring others in digital marketing before you even made a single sale in digital marketing.
Nothing makes Sense.
Again, I'm not trying to come from a place of shame or judgment if that's how it's coming across. I'm just legitimately confused how these people don't see that you can't be a mentor or an expert in something that you've actually never done. Like, I want you to imagine for a second that I decide that I'm going to become a basketball coach. For context, I've never played basketball in my entire life. I don't even know the rules of basketball. I've never even watched a basketball game. But let's just say I make a little Instagram account. I title myself Basketball Coach, and I start posting on that account every single day for 8 months. And then after 8 months, someone finally hires me and pays me to be their basketball coach. Am I all of a sudden qualified to be a basketball coach just because I was able to convince someone to pay me to be their basketball coach? Because personally, I don't think so. If you disagree, you can let me know in the comments. But in my opinion, just because I decided that I was something, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have any experience or that I'm even capable of teaching other people how to do it. This is the problem. This is the purpose of this video. The internet is seriously broken. It is legitimately the Wild West. And that's why I'm not gonna shut up about it. There's no vetting process. There's no credentials needed. Anyone can wake up today, tomorrow, the next day, and decide to call themselves a mentor, a coach, an expert in literally anything, regardless of whether they have the knowledge, the experience, the education. It's exhausting. If you're good enough at marketing, you understand how to identify people's pain points and offer them a solution, get them to pay you for that solution, even if you don't have the experience to back it up. You can make money even if you shouldn't be selling that thing. But just because you can sell something doesn't mean you should sell something, at least morally from my perspective. And I think this is particularly dangerous because it perpetuates something that we talk about a lot here on this channel, and that's the idea of the mentality of only needing to be a few steps ahead of whoever you're trying to help, or starting to provide your service or your offers before you feel ready to do so. Basically implying that even if you don't know what you're doing, you can just figure it out along the way. And listen, as a business owner myself, I get the idea that sometimes we really do just kind of have to figure things out as we go, or maybe we feel uncomfortable in offering our services or our products to people. I know in my 6 years as an entrepreneur, I've definitely gone through experiences of imposter syndrome or feeling like, who am I to be offering this service? Who am I to be charging X amount of dollars for this thing? That's not really what I'm talking about here though. I'm talking about literally not being qualified whatsoever, but playing such an intense game of mental gymnastics with yourself that you convince yourself it's fine and that you don't need to be qualified in order to offer that product or service or advice or whatever. And this is harmful for so many reasons that, of course, we're going to get into. Pretending to be an expert or calling yourself an expert in something you have no business being an expert in my opinion, is poor judgment at best and straight up exploitation at worst. I want you to imagine this in literally any context. Let's say you break your arm and your neighbor suddenly decides that they are an expert in medicine. They are a doctor because they decided. Does that delusional belief that they have somehow suddenly acquired the necessary skills and expertise to be a medical professional actually give them the ability to be able to help you heal your broken arm? No. And in fact, if you trusted them to try and reset your arm in the right place, chances are they're going to actually end up doing a lot more harm than good. And I think this same sort of analogy applies to the context of so many of these self-proclaimed experts that are flaunting their expertise all over the internet. Whether that's in business, digital marketing, nutrition, ADHD, mental health, finance, education, so many of the other topics that we've already covered in other videos here on my channel. Showing up and selling something on the internet that you have no business selling can have serious and harmful consequences. Like truly, where do I even begin? Don't worry, I made a list. Before we do that, I do want to give a particular shout out to these channel members who, at the moment of filming this video, have graduated, if you will, into the 12-month club here on my channel. Their little emoji is now a unicorn, which is pretty cute. I want to shout out Chronically Bee Queen, Lisa Hance, Chai, Kat V, and Pablo Eater. It's actually wild to me to think that there are some of you out there who have been supporting this channel for over 12 months. And I just want you to know that whether you're one of those people or you're new and you join me somewhere along the way, I appreciate you so, so much. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my channel members, in particular the Millionaire VIPs, as well as the Beloved Billionaire tier. If you're interested in learning more about my channel membership, you can click that join button down below. Now, the first risk or consequence that I perceive of people pretending to be an expert in something that they're not on the internet is the spread of misinformation. When unqualified people position themselves as experts, there's an opportunity there for them to knowingly or unknowingly spread information that is either inaccurate, untrue, or just misguided. Specifically, I think when people don't actually have an understanding of the thing that they're talking about, they're much more likely to just regurgitate random facts that they heard from who knows where without ever actually checking to see if those facts are indeed facts. And this actually reminds me of an analogy that my high school English teacher taught me, and I may have shared this in another video, so if you've heard it already, I'm sorry. But basically, she was teaching us about the importance of utilizing peer-reviewed studies when we were doing research. And I mean, this was back in 2006 before everyone had a smartphone and we were connected to the internet 24/7. So at that time, this information was like not necessarily common sense like it might be now. But basically, she explained to us that when you are doing research for a topic, you're fact checking something, if you were to go on Google and just click on any random link that you find and read whatever it says and take it as fact, that would essentially be the equivalent of finding a piece of paper blowing in the wind on the sidewalk, picking it up, opening it, reading whatever was written on it, and believing that it's true. And I mean, I think that that's still what's happening on the internet. I can open TikTok on my phone and see some guy speaking in an authoritative tone, saying something as if it's fact, and believing it without actually fact checking to see if what he's saying is actually true. And I mean, that was my personal experience when I hired my first coach. She decided somewhere along the way that she was a mindset coach. I hired her. She convinced me that I too could become a mindset coach. So I became a mindset coach, an expert in mindset, if you will. I basically copied all of the prompts and techniques and exercises that she would use with me on my own clients. And I was never really fact checking or doing my own research beyond reading endless amounts of self-help books. And while sure, now it's kind of embarrassing to admit, I know that I'm not alone in this experience. I see it every single day in the online space. Business coaches copying their business coach. Digital marketing mentors copying their mentors. Social media experts copying some other social media expert. Why? Because they were sold on the promise that it was going to be easy. And if they dig too deep, they might find out the truth. The truth is that it's not going to be easy. You know, I was actually Googling why misinformation spreads as I was doing research for this video, and it came up with a post from the University of Victoria, which is a university here on the west coast of Canada, located over on Vancouver Island. And this is what it read. False news can spread through circular reporting, where one source publishes misinformation that's picked up by another news outlet who cites the source as evidence that the information is accurate. And while obviously this is referring to like fake news specifically, I think the principle of the circular spread of information, particularly misinformation, is rampantly true in the online space as well. And I think it's this spread of misinformation as a result of inexperience that can lead to some seriously detrimental outcomes, especially when we think about things like health or business or finance. Now, the second risk or consequence of people pretending to be experts that immediately came to mind for me, and maybe it came to mind for you too, that is financial exploitation. It's my opinion that people who position themselves as an expert, specifically when they don't actually have experience or knowledge in that thing, and then charge people money for their products or services or offers, those people are in fact exploiting the people whose monies they're taking, regardless of whether they know it or not. I mean, the concept of whether or not some of these grifters know that they are grifters could be like a whole video in itself, but I digress. But what I see time and time again in the context of these overpriced courses, coaching programs, or products that offer little to no value are basically being positioned from the stance of,
I am an expert in XYZ. If you pay me all this money, you too can become an expert in XYZ.
I mean, if we think back to the initial example I gave at the beginning of this video with the woman who was selling MRR, chances are that person bought the $500, $300, whatever dollar course from someone else who called themselves a digital marketing mentor and sold them on the idea that because they purchased this course, they too could now position themselves as a digital marketing mentor and sell the course to other people. In my opinion, it's manipulative, it preys on people's trust, and it takes advantage of the vulnerability of one's audience. Risk or consequence number 3, which comes up a lot in the interviews that I do here on this channel, is the emotional and psychological harm that comes from someone cosplaying as an expert in something that they're not. And more specifically, I think that this type of harm, can manifest in two different ways. The first one being much like the consequences of the spread of misinformation, like we already talked about, and that is people who call themselves experts and give misguided or completely incorrect advice, specifically when it comes to more sensitive topics like mental health, weight loss, finances, business, or honestly, anything at this point. Those people could absolutely be putting their clients in harm's way. For example, I think back to the very first interview I ever did on this channel. I will link it here in case you've never seen it. But the woman in that video explains a story of how, through working with her coach, who presumably was certainly not an expert in business based on the purely terrible advice she gave her, ended up having to claim bankruptcy because she was continuously investing under the guidance of her coach. This was someone who had positioned themselves as an expert and then proceeded to continuously give her bad advice. But not only that, she was taking her money, and then when things didn't work out, she essentially just left the client high and dry and was like, good luck, figure it out on your own. I mean, I have an entire playlist of interviews and examples if you want more evidence about what I'm saying here. Now, the second way that I believe these fake experts can cause emotional or psychological harm actually comes in the aftermath of working together. Some of the people who invest their time and their money and their trust and oftentimes their reputation in these self-proclaimed experts may experience emotional distress when they come to realize that they've been led astray. I think back to my experience in 2018 working with my first coach, which, by the way, I'm working on a more explanatory full-length video where I share that experience in depth. I felt so much shame for years about the fact that I had been duped. So much so that it took me nearly 4 years, basically until I ever posted my first video about it here on this channel, to actually admit publicly that I had been scammed. I mean, if you take a quick scroll on the Life Coach Snark subreddit, which I talk about endlessly here on this channel, you will see countless stories of people who experience anger and frustration and feelings of betrayal, all because they fell prey to one of these at-home armchair experts. Ooh, whew, I'm getting heated, like literally so hot. Okay, the last risk or consequence that I want to mention before we wrap up here is actually related more to the online service provider industry as a whole. And that is the erosion of actual expertise, or rather the erosion of the perception of actual expertise. So I was on a call last month with a few small business friends. We meet usually once a month just to chat business. And one of my friends in that group identifies as a digital marketer. Now, she's been doing this since like 2017, 2018. She's not new to the game. However, she was expressing in this call that she no longer wants to call herself a digital marketer because all of these people with their MRR courses have ruined it for her. And I think what I've started to notice, especially beyond just like the digital marketing space, but given the nature of the virality on apps like TikTok and Instagram as of late, it's really easy for people to gain notoriety or attention when they're not an expert because they had a video go viral. And that really starts to overshadow the genuine talent and the genuine expertise that exists out there. I mean, I see this with the number of therapists that come into my DMs and ask me, like, how do I stand out online when I'm being bombarded with these coaches who call themselves experts in mental health? Professionals who have dedicated years of their life into crafting their expertise are now struggling to compete with these people who are falsely claiming that they are experts. And I think it's this proliferation of these like fake experts, for lack of a better term, that really just contributes to this like broader erosion of trust of people online and expertise as a whole. Like, I would love for you to comment down below if you are experiencing these thoughts where it's really hard to discern online who is a fraudster and who is a legitimate service provider. Because I know even for me sometimes I'm like, what is happening? And honestly, one of the most common questions I get, specifically here in my YouTube comments, but again, also in my Instagram DMs, is like, how do I know if someone is a scammer? And honestly, sometimes even for someone like me who spends hours every single week researching and keeping tabs on like what's happening in this space, it's really hard to know sometimes. All that to say, I think that having these kinds of conversations are super important when it comes to exercising our ability to think critically when we are evaluating what we are seeing being presented online versus what the actual reality might be. But naturally, I think it only makes sense for me to try and provide you with at least a little bit of advice in this video, basically so you can hopefully at least to some degree discern who's legitimate and who's not. And this is coming from me, Danielle Ryan, self-proclaimed, totally not certified expert in spotting scammers on the internet. So guard your wallets, folks, and let's get into it. I think you get it by now. When inexperienced people provide subpar services, advice, products, offers, etc., it reflects poorly on the entire industry and it undermines people's trust and credibility. So how do we avoid getting scammed? Well, I think that there's a few things that you can and should do before you ever consider forking over any of your money to someone on the internet. First, and probably most obviously, look for verified or verifiable credentials. Look, I'm not saying everyone needs to be formally educated or certified in their particular area of expertise. This is obviously highly industry or niche dependent. Like a therapist should absolutely be licensed, but a social media manager maybe not necessarily. At bare minimum though, you should be able to decipher as the consumer someone's background or level of experience in their particular field. And often I think that from a consumer perspective, that comes from simply not being afraid to ask questions. If you're looking to hire someone and to give them your hard-earned money, they owe it to you to be forthcoming in answering any questions or concerns that you have, especially when it comes to questions about their qualifications. And so anyone who you ask questions to that kind of like skirts around the answer or avoids having to directly give a response to the questions that you're asking, that's usually a pretty clear indicator that you should avoid them at all costs. Next, I would encourage you to look for a proven track record. Genuine experts tend to have a history of achievements, and they can provide you with concrete examples of the work that they've done and the success stories that they have achieved or helped to achieve. They likely won't be relying purely on vague testimonials or screenshots, and they won't be using exaggerated claims because they have concrete evidence to support the results that they say they can help you achieve. Again, don't be afraid to ask questions, and if you aren't given clear answers, run away. Third, I will say that ethical conduct or transparency is likely a pretty good indicator that someone is not out to scam you. And I know there's a conversation to be had about who defines what is or isn't ethical, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. Instead, I believe that genuine experts tend to operate with integrity, they understand boundaries, and they're willing to prioritize your well-being as the client over their ability to make a quick buck. This means they likely won't make unrealistic promises. They're probably pretty open about what their methods are. They aren't guaranteeing you instant success. And most importantly, they are aware of the limitations of their advice. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had conversations both with people here on my channel as well as elsewhere on the internet of people who basically were interested in a program but felt like maybe they weren't 100% a good fit, being pressured into signing up or making the purchase for that program with no returns, no refunds, no ability to get their money back once they realized that they were in fact not a good fit for the program. So that being said, I would also be wary of anyone that's using high pressure sales tactics and making you feel like you have to rush into a major financial decision. I mean, I could go on about that particular piece for days, but I actually think I did a video about how to avoid getting scammed in like a broader sense, and if so, I will link it at the end of this video. I want to give a big thank you to you for supporting the social media scam series. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you want me to cover in episode 4. I have a few thoughts around these like online certification programs and how anyone can certify anyone in anything. But I'd love to hear from you about what you want to see. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Stay safe out there. Do not join the Coaches Coaching Coaches pyramid. Take care, comb your hair, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!